Okie dokie smoky. So I know that's an interesting intro, but welcome to this week's reading vlog. I have already read some books because, like I said, I have been a ravenous reader. One of which is a graphic novel called It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth. This is an autobiographic kind of novel, and it definitely feels that way. It's a very depressing book about depression, basically, and the creators struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts. So do read trigger warnings. I think some people, because it is depicted visually as well, it might be too much. For me, I was fine with it, even though like it was touching on things that I have personal experience with. I was fine with it. I found humor in it. It's a very dark humor, but I did chuckle out loud. The illustration style, gorgeous. I freaking loved it. The creator also did different. She varied her, I'm just gendering her. They varied their style throughout the book, which I thought was really fun. It kept things fresh. So they changed up the style of illustration. I don't want to like flip through because I feel like with graphic novels, you know, that's giving too much away. Like go and read it yourself if it interests you. Yeah, did I enjoy it? Well, I don't really think I can enjoy a book about depression and suicidal ideation and heartbreak and all of these very heavy themes and imposter syndrome. It's, you know, it's a dark and depressing book. It is what it is. Some obviously people like to read that because they can resonate with it. It makes them feel like they're not alone. So I think they definitely have their place. If I was going to read it, it'd be 3 stars. Like, you know, I love the illustrations, but I wasn't in the right frame of mind to read about these things. Books hit differently depending on what kind of place in your life you're at that moment. So this is probably one of those cases where maybe if I was resonating with all that at that point, I'd be like, oh my God, I feel seen. But at the moment I was like, oh, my heart goes out for this author, for what they're going through. I'm like, man, this brought me down. It did bring me down a little bit, but yeah, I appreciate the art that was in it and the vulnerability it takes to talk about oneself and what they're going through. Because I think they mentioned too, they got a lot of hate for their previous work. People were saying that they're basically sucking their own dick, and you know, hate is gonna hate. What can you say? Trolls gonna trolls. It's like I said, hats off to anybody who puts out any kind of content, any art, any creativity, because people will come for it. People will ravage it, and it's hard. It's hard to hear. It's hard to stomach when you've been so, like I said, vulnerable and personal in putting something out there. But you know, it's very brave. Okay, so the next book I read was this one. Look, as you guys know, I haven't been on a date for myself in months. I'm as a demisexual too. I can't just be intimate with people that I'm not in a long-term serious relationship with. I wish I could to get that itch scratched, but it's just not the way I'm wired. So what it means is, like, unless I'm in a relationship, I'm not, you know, getting anything more than a peck on the lips, and that's happened twice in a year. I've kissed 2 people on the first date. Didn't go any further. There was no tongue. You know what I mean? Like very chaste kisses. That's all I've gotten since I broke up, since my relationship ended. And you know, I've got frustrations, I've got needs, but this is how I'm filling them. By reading what I guess is, you know, literature porn. It basically is. So this is her Lessons in Persuasion in the School for Scoundrels novel by Megan Frampton. I just thought, you know, I saw this brand new come in. I would only get a sexy book from the library if it was just freshly brought in. That's just how I feel about that. Otherwise, I'd be getting the ebook. So I was first on the rank for this one. I've given it a 3.25. You know, it's typical of its genre. You've got a Regency Victorian historical romance with a young woman who is an astronomer, who doesn't want a husband. She's 30 years old. Her family and her new young stepmummy desperately want to marry her off. And then you've got a bookish barrister who was an orphan and has made his way, and who also doesn't want a wife. And basically they have a little meet cute meeting, and then the young stepmom decides, hey, we're going to increase your market value and your desirability by parading you around with some dude so that men will covet what others have. And so these two end up in a fake dating scenario where they're both just dating each other to get their friends and family off their backs about finding a spouse. Obviously for her, for him, it's about getting his friends off his back. For her, it's to please her stepmother in luring in other potential bachelors, you know, by making her appear coveted. It's a very, it's cute, but it's very silly. Like, don't take this seriously. Take your logic hat off and just enjoy the ride. It's fast paced. Both of these, the FMC and the MMC, are both virgins, which is not something I personally enjoy like one of them maybe, but both of them I'm like, oh, okay. You know, like I just especially don't believe like two virgins are both going to get their rocks off straight away first time with each other, like without even watching things to learn like what to do. I don't know, like in this day, in this era, like were two versions that skilled? Just like I said, put the logic away and then try and enjoy it. So it was fine. It was a very quick read. This author's style is not for me, so I won't be looking at any more books by this particular author. Yeah, it was fine. 3.25. It was a fine read, you know. So that's what I've read so far. I'll see you the next time I have read a book.
Hey guys, so I have some questions for you. So this book is for my in real life book club. If it wasn't for the book club, I would have DNF'd this at 25 pages. So basically this is a story of a podcaster who goes back to her hometown to reinvestigate the death of one of her former high school friends. Where do I start with this one? So I've given it 1.5 stars. I really do not like it. The writing style, not for me. The main character, very unlikable. And also true crime podcasting, I don't jive with it. However, this book is so long. This is a 450-page book. I think this could have been axed by at least 150 pages at the very minimum. All of the info dumping is just padded with so much superfluous detail that is not important to the story. I don't need to know every single quirk and nuance and like and dislike of every single character, nor do I need to know everything that's going on in the main character's head. I was just bogged down with crap, basically. I think the author is also trying to add deep and meaningful commentary on a bunch of social issues such as BLM, misogyny, yada, yada, yada. However, their attempts come off as very superficial, surface level, and cringe. And there was just nothing I liked about this book. It bored me to tears. I struggled to get through it. I pushed through, and in the end, I was skimming, which is something I do not like to do. If I'm going to skim a book, I may as well not read it, but I had to at least know what went on so I could participate in the book club discussions. But yeah, I'm hoping other people felt the same way and I'm not the only outlier, but I did not like this whatsoever. There was not one thing I liked about it, not even the cover. So I have some questions for you as an absolute dud, and it kind of did put me into a book slump. I think this was a lesson for me too, that even if there's a book for book club, I don't have to finish it. If it's going to really steal from my happiness levels, don't do it now. It's not worth it. I can just be honest and say, hey, I read this many pages and I couldn't push through anymore, but I'd love to hear what everybody else thought about it. So never again will I make myself suffer through a book. Today, I'm taking my kids out for breakfast and then dropping them off at their dad's house. And then I will talk about another book I've read, but I don't have time to do the review for it now, but much better. It was much better than this one. So a glowing review is coming.
Okay, so just got home. The next book I read was the sequel to Divine Rivals, and I love this. I stayed up all night to finish it. That's Nova scratching, and I've got Bluebell here. I am going to give it a 4.5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Can't talk much about it because it is a sequel, but it did delve more into the God aspect, which was nice. There was a sort of amnesia trope used that I'm not a biggest fan of, but luckily it didn't last too long. The romance is lovely. So this really is about the relationship between Roman and Iris. That's the meat and bones of this book. It's very sweet. There were some brutal, bloody, violent moments, being a book about war. But yeah, I had a good time. 4.5 stars. So Bluebell's just shoving it around. And yeah, it was a good ending to the duology. There's Nova. Okay, so I just read Love Match, which Indiana, I just farted with my hands. Sorry, I forgot about that. Used to do it all the time as a kid. I just read Love Match, which Indiana picked for me from the library. And it's a sapphic romance featuring tennis. And I DNF'd it at 5 pages because the main character was speeding. She was doing 130 in a 100 zones. This is kilometers per hour because it's an Australian book. That is extreme, to go 30 kilometers over the limit, and especially to be doing 130. That's nuts. And the issue for me was when she was caught by the police, she was like infuriated that they were upset with her. She believed that it was a perfectly reasonable speed to be doing because she was late to dinner with her parents. And she was like, tell me off and let me go. Like, I shouldn't be getting pulled up for this. It's only 130 in a 100 zone. And look, I have personal experience with speeding and people's lives being taken by speeding. So, you know, the only possible scenario that I could possibly be like, okay, it was reasonable to be going that much faster is if you just got a phone call saying your loved one was critically injured and was going to die, and you're just trying to get there before they die. That's the only thing that I can think of. Like if someone said, hey, your child's just been hit by a car, they're going to this hospital, I could understand, like maybe I would speed to get to the hospital. But speeding, okay, it's not great anyway, but to do 132, like 30 Ks over, holy crap, Batman, that's just significant amount, you know? And the fact that she was just so blasé, like it's no big deal. It's not a thing. Why are you pulling me over? Oh, didn't like her. And I thought, no, I can't read about you. I can't read about you. So I did DNF that book. So the next book that I'm going to grab is One's Company. I think that's what it's called. It's got a really cute cover. It's a book where a woman wins money and she decides to live out her life like she's in the TV show Three's Company. So it's interesting. I realized that my favorite kind of like litfic is weird fiction. Like I need it to be weird in some way, maybe even a little bit fantastical, like some magical element, but otherwise just weird. If it's just regular litfic, unless it's tackling themes like grief, which is I've come to find a subject that tends to make me very engaged in a book and like it. Grief is one of my hook emotions in terms of being explored through fiction. But yeah, so I'm hoping for something a bit different. If that's no good, the next one I've got lined up is Monstrilio. I saw so many people raving about it. It's a horror book about the grief of a mother losing their child. So I'm sure it will affect me in some way because that is like the only fear that I ever have is losing my child to death. Like that's the only thing. I'll handle everything else, but to bury a child, I think is the worst pain imaginable. So those are the two books that I lined up in my docket. Next, I am just going to be relaxing reading today because the kids have gone to their dads now and it's summer holidays. So I actually have a few days in a row of a break, which is fan-bloody-tastic. But otherwise, it's going to be a quiet one. I've decided I was going to take February off the dating app, but I am now doing it instead because it's just taking too much of my time, scrolling through people and starting conversations, most of which don't go anywhere, and then the others resulting in only like one date. It just hasn't worked for me yet, and I want to take back that energy and invest it in other areas. So I am going to be offline in the dating world, I guess. Still open to real world connections if they come along, but otherwise, yeah, the virtual dating world is not for me. I'm going to reassess in February, see if I want to get back on. We'll see how we go. But yeah, I'm actually looking forward to having a hot month, not having to log onto the app and, you know, check my matches. It's just, no, I'd rather not do that. Okay, so the next book I read was The Little Book of Humanist Funerals. I've given this a 3.25. I didn't really care for the parts that were sort of shilling the humanist funeral services. I, however, loved all of the quotes and poetry and excerpts about living, dying, and death. I thought they were beautiful, and I loved the formatting of the book in general. So I finished One's Company, and I've given this 3.25. The cover I love. I'm a big sucker for green and pink together for some reason, but I really do love the cover. The book itself, this is a weird, dark book. It was so much darker than I anticipated. So the main character, Bonnie, goes through severe trauma and grief and depression. Her mental health is heavily impacted to the point where you're not actually sure what's real and what's not. So there is that element in here. So if you don't like those books where you can't 100% ascertain that what is happening is actually happening, then I wouldn't recommend this for you. As Bonnie's reaction to the things that have happened in her life, she ends up skewing towards delusional disassociation and ends up immersing herself, after winning the lottery, into the show Three's Company. She's living her life as each of the characters and creates an elaborate on-set experience where she's the only person there. So she does also isolate herself completely from the outside world and from those who previously had been her family. So there's also the concept of like, who is your family? Is it one you choose, one you're born into? I would say that Bonnie is not a likable character. You're not really admiring her or rooting for her, and some of her actions are quite harmful to others. There are also animals harmed in this, so trigger warning there. But yeah, look, there were parts I liked about the book, but overall it was just so much more intense and depressing than I was assuming it would be. I thought there'd be a bit more of a humorous element to it. I said I previously enjoy weird fiction. I think this is weird fiction. Perhaps I like absurdist fiction a bit more because there is that humorous element in there as well to sort of counterbalance the darkness and the strangeness going on in the book. The ending is a little odd. It's a bit ambiguous. I was left wondering what really happened. There is a sapphic element in this as well. But yeah, 3.25. It was an interesting read. Definitely not like anything I have read previously. The next book that I got into, and I've read 30 pages thus far, is Monstrilio. So this is a horror book about a couple who loses their child, and then the mother keeps a piece of her child's lung and feeds it, and it grows into this creature that isn't really their son, but I'm guessing it's going to explore themes of grief and loss and family and love, maternal love. So far, yeah, it starts off pretty intense. So you're starting off with the son's death, and it hit me in the heart. But the main characters, I think her name is Magos, her reaction to her son's death is very odd. I guess grief hits people in very different ways. There's already been a bit of this eerie quality introduced right from the get-go, and obviously the body horror element of her literally carving open her son's chest to take a piece of the lung. So yeah, it's very unsettling, and we'll see how we go with it. So I might head to the library today so that I can pick some other books up in case this one maybe is a bit too full on and I need to take a break. I don't know if it's a book that I can read in its entirety in one sitting. We shall see. But I'm also heading to the Cafe Rustica today, which is known for their pastries and their sourdough. But that's all I have on the agenda, and I'll see you soon.